Om Namo Venkateshaya to all of you. Today we are going to decode Saturn placement of your birth chart, and we will be going house wise, right from the first house till the 12th house in a lot of detail. Saturn is one of those planets which is highly misunderstood, highly fear-mongered across the internet, and even misunderstood in form of the readings that you would see. And you will also see that a lot of people would not even acknowledge the blessings they have in their real life through Saturn. Saturn is one of those few planets that can actually make or break a lot of things in your birth chart. It holds a lot of power in your birth chart, given that apart from its own placement, it has the power to aspect three different houses within your entire birth chart that would be revolving around different themes of your life. It would be creating different challenges within your life, and it will also reward you according to those challenges. A very overrated term which is as always associated with Saturn is the fact that it always supports delays over denial. But the reality is Saturn is like a protector. It does not really care whether you actually enjoy the pressure it is trying to give you. It does not really care whether you misunderstand it or not. It does not really care whether you are undergoing an extremely hard phase in your life. Its fundamental intrinsic nature is to create obstacles and challenges within your life and then waits to see your reaction to all of these challenges. It is one of those planets which has the power to hold your karma as well as the rewards associated with your karma. And that is why Saturn owns the 10th and the 11th natural signification zodiac signs or rashis, as we like to say it, which is Capricorn and Aquarius, that comes continuously. Saturn is also one of those planets which is slowest in terms of transiting in a different zodiac sign from where it is placed, because it will take approximately 2.5 years to actually even move from one sign to another in your birth chart. Saturn always creates challenges in your life and waits for you to react to them in the correct fashion so that you can convert these challenges into opportunities. And you definitely will learn one very important thing with Saturn, which is acceptance. It is not about delay or denial at all. It is about acceptance. It is about being protected at the cost of misunderstanding something which you are always desiring for, and Saturn will steal it away from you, because it might not be the most optimal path which you might be navigating towards. And that is what Saturn does. So whenever you are trying to read Saturn in your birth chart, always remember that the house in which this Saturn is placed will be extremely good for you, irrespective of the challenges it is going to bring in the themes of your life. Saturn, being the justice god, will never do injustice to the house where it is being placed, but it will definitely give you a lot of troubles in the way you perceive it. And the houses where it will be aspecting, which is the 3rd house, the 7th house, and the 10th house away from its own placement, are the places where you will actually see challenges manifesting in form of circumstances in your life, and it is your duty to overcome them. Saturn has this quintessential vibe to it that it will never let you settle down to be a silver. It will always pressurize you to the extent that you will break down in the hope that you eventually become a diamond. But after you have become a diamond, it is very much possible that you have no longer the desire to become a diamond itself. So you are in hold of your abundance in your life, but still living in denial about it. That is how powerful Saturn tries to create a legacy in your life, and therefore it will only give you those rewards at a much later stage. Many a times you would feel that this delay is actually equivalent to a denial. But what you neglect over here strongly is the fact that you were protected. Protected in the ways that you yourself couldn't contemplate. And sometimes it takes you multiple years to even realize what Saturn exactly did to protect you. And then when you look back at your life, let's say back 5 years since you have came forward in your life in the future, you would realize that no, some things manifested for you, some disappointments that came your way have only made you stronger. And that's what the intention was. Because today, whatever you define yourself to be is what Saturn really shaped out of you. If you have planets in your chart with a lot of Saturn nakshatras associated with it, then you will also see a lot of money making opportunities that comes and paves way in your life. Always remember, Saturn also does give rewards because it is the natural significator of Aquarius, which is the sign for rewards. And therefore, you will also see this, that the rewards and success which is given by Saturn is much more immense compared to what Sun can give you, compared to what Jupiter can bless you with, compared to what a courageous Mars can grant you. Saturn will make sure that you literally provide a legacy related to that house only if you are able to succumb to all of these obstacles, challenges, and plethora of circumstances that creates in your life on a daily basis in terms of your experiences and the way you react to it in the correct way. Many a times you would see that the person has not been able to reach the pinnacle potential which Saturn really promises in their birth chart. But nevertheless, it is one of the most misunderstood protectors. And you will also relate to this in the form of mythological or the historical stories that are associated with Saturn in any culture. Before I move ahead, if you have not followed me on Twitter, do go ahead and follow me up on Twitter, where I will be posting a lot of content on a regular basis regarding transit updates and many different insights regarding astrology that I can provide you with. Alright, now let's talk about what happens when Saturn comes to the third house of the birth chart. If you have a person who is having Saturn in the third house of your Kundali or your D1 chart. When Saturn comes to the third house, it makes you extremely strategic as an individual. You are a person who does not shy away from hard work. But unfortunately, Saturn will make you work rigorously over here. You are a person who always started their early childhood professing this mantra that hard work is the most essential element to success in life. You are a person who gave their all in order to manifest the desires which you always wanted in your life to have. But unfortunately, as life progressed, the biggest challenge you saw was a shift in your belief system. With Saturn in the third house, you saw that your efforts were never matched with the proportional results that you deserved. And that is something similar you share with somebody who is having Saturn in the ninth house as well. You will always see that you are a person who cries this quite often, that I put 200x efforts into doing something and I am getting only 50x results out of it. While there is another person who is only putting 50x efforts and they are getting 200x returns out of it. And this makes you very acrimonious. This makes you very internally angry about your life and how things are progressing. On top of that, when you are having Saturn in the third house, you always become very skeptical about the gurus or the spirituality that is always projected or professed in front of you. You have always seen in your life that teachers who have often came or entered your life have only done one thing, and that is to kill your curiosity. Unfortunately, you always have been taken for granted by teachers, and many a times whenever you wanted to ask worthy questions also, you were demoralized or belittled by them. That makes you again very acrimonious, but also makes you a self-taught teacher because you know what not to do in order to become a bad teacher. On top of that, you always have seen this another interesting trait when Saturn comes in the third house is that you have stood up for your friendships very often. But it is also true that the maximum amount of trauma that you have faced in your life comes and resorts from such friendships only. You have stood up for a person, you have taken a stand to support them, and that person themselves are the ones who have backstabbed at you and made you question the very essence of trust you have on human society as a whole. You will often see yourself going into introspection zones about your friendships, but unfortunately, I have often seen this with a person with Saturn in third house, that they never learn their lesson and they are again back hunting down that perfect friend in search of the right one who can impart a sense of belonging to them, and then they again are being misused by them like a loop. On top of that, you are a person who was often very shy initially in your childhood, especially in terms of communication, because third house also, apart from your parakram or effort, stands for communication. But in later stage in life, you become an excellent orator like none other. You literally set exemplary examples for people to follow. You are a person who overcame fear of stage. You are a person who overcame that shakiness you had or that shivering you had while talking to other people around, and you are a person who now knows exactly what to speak when to impress the other person. You can read the mind of the other person very vividly because of the seventh aspect of Saturn to your ninth house. It boosts your intuition extremely over here, especially in a very spiritually uplifting way also. As I earlier mentioned, that such a person who is having Saturn in the third house will be deprived of the results that are proportionate to their effort. So once they have actually learned this the hard way, circumstantially, and they experience disappointment after seeing the other person move ahead of them in life, they go towards spirituality. And that is what the 10th aspect of this Saturn to the 12th house is all about. This person inclines them to develop a new foundational belief system that is very hard for anybody else to challenge. And this is not only about spirituality, it is more about developing a conviction upon themselves about their own life. So if you meet a Saturn third house person, such a person will definitely tell you that success is not guaranteed in life, but that does not bother me and that does not undermine my determination to chase my goals in life. In fact, that is what has motivated me even further to put in 400x efforts instead of 200x and then surpass the other person who has achieved 200x results just by 50x efforts. And that is what truly defines them. These set of people are extremely courageous, but unfortunately their trust is often misused by others and then they become extremely suspicious about their friend circle. Saturn in the third house also makes them a very fearful parent. Initially, they don't want to become a parent themselves because they have seen a lot of trust issues here and there with their relationships around society in general, sometimes even within the family, unfortunately. And therefore, they have developed kind of like an initial trauma that what if I do not become a good parent? Will the child deserve something like me as a parent? And this is exactly, translates them into becoming the perfect parent which nobody else can ever come nearby also, because that is the biggest challenge they have in their life, is to be able to commit themselves to their children or to their future generation even if they do not get married. Saturn in the third house will always be surrounded by people who are younger than them. This is something of an unpopular opinion. Why? Because younger people find that sense of maturity in you, and with that still childish behavior, which is means that you are still a person who is child at heart and you are extremely good at expressing yourself nearby younger people, and you feel energized to be around them as well. If Rahu ever comes to the fifth house and the Saturn is placed in the third house, then such a person probably decides not to marry also many a times, because they become very fearful about toxic relationships here and there. Also, you would see that when Saturn comes to the third house, the ninth house, which is being the seventh aspect from the third house, will be activated highly in the later stages of life as time progresses. such a person will definitely go for a lot of pilgrimages. They will experience some circumstantial experiences that would validate them as something which is truly deserve worthy to be inclined towards spirituality. They won't be able to explain what they have experienced from spirituality to anybody else, but on a personal level they know with the 10th aspect to 12th house that what true spirituality is defined like. On top of that, such a person is extremely intelligent also. They have a lot of gyan or lot of knowledge which they have acquired. They know how to network very properly. Contrary to the popular opinion that they prefer to be introverted, they prefer to be a person who is feeling lonely in a gathering. But that does not mean that they do not have the ability to make friends. In fact, quite the contrary. A Saturn in the third house person can easily make somebody else vulnerable to them. But the reverse of this is not true. And therefore, other people should be very careful with interactions with such a person, because such a person might be crafty enough to know your secrets but will never tell anything about themselves. This isn't meaning that they cannot be trusted. In fact, quite contrary to that, you can always depend on a Saturn third house person to always keep secrets for you. But this person will take a lot of time to process and become vulnerable to you because of their initial childhood experiences that I already explained. On top of that, an interesting fun trait about Saturn in third house is that initially they have always seen that they have a workplace which is slightly far away in terms of travels, and they have to commute daily on and go again on and off to be able to work and expedite their responsibilities, to the extent that sometimes they develop a trauma of commuting and then they decide to settle extremely nearby their workplace itself. Saturn in the third house people also make excellent bosses at a later stage in time because they know exactly what not to do to become a bad boss. Again, so such a person has experienced a lot of gaslighting, a lot of misunderstandings with the authorities, with the elders, sometimes also sees polite disagreement with their own fathers also. But they eventually become a person who is self-made and puts effort in the correct direction to achieve and manifest in life. Before I move ahead, if you have not followed me on Twitter, do go ahead and follow me up on Twitter, where I will be posting a lot of content on a regular basis regarding transit updates and many different insights regarding astrology that I can provide you with.